Okay. All right. So good morning. I've got the tracking report went out yesterday afternoon, should be posted to the website. I will go ahead and pull a copy up so we can refer to both the document that you have in your possession, and I can go back and forth with my tracker. So as we did last week, so now legislation has started. So that means we should not get any new bills. The bills we have are the bills we're going to be playing with. There's, of course, always opportunities to amend and modify and bring new things in. And so I'm not saying that we're not going to see any new issues, but just a quick kind of highlight of what has been filed in the last week is really remarkable. Um, I think a week ago we were probably at 1,100 bills, and now we're at 840 this year, 1,840. So really a ton of last minute filings. I've gone through everything that I think has anything to do with environment and tagged it, and I'm tracking 42 bills, which is in this spreadsheet that was posted to the website yesterday. So everybody should be able to access this spreadsheet. It is sorted, and it will be sorted throughout the session by the last action. This is up to date as of yesterday when I printed it or when I produced it. Over here on the left are clickable links. So you can actually go to the bill text and look at bill analysis and things like that. But again, these are ordered in action date. Now at the beginning of session, there's not a lot of spread between the first bill and the last bill. There's really only, I mean, everything is 3.5 and 3.4, and then finally some things down here at the bottom that haven't had action since February. But as the session goes ahead, bills are going to be, that are active are going to move their way to the top of this report, and the bills at the bottom of this report are going to be less and less important to talk about. So that will help us as we go week to week, stay focused on kind of what's moving, and don't get too distracted about a bill just because it's been filed. It also has to be, moving its way through the process. Um, so let me start out by saying that if anybody ever sees a bill that isn't on this report that you think should be tracked by me because it's got environmental implications, and I don't have a very strict definition of that word. So if you think it's something that we should care about, um, then let me know, and I will, you know, be pretty liberal in my inclusion on this report. Um, Okay, so we're at the very beginning. There's not a ton of action, but there have been a handful of bills that have made it through their first committee stops. There are also a handful of bills that are being tracked by us that are scheduled for next week. So we're starting to see committee schedules um, pop for next week's environmental committees. So the committees are referenced that most of these bills that we care about are going to go through include environment and natural resources on the Senate side, and they call it new things every year. Natural resources and disasters subcommittee on the House side. Isn't that a great title for a committee? Uh, anyway, we don't have the March 11th committee schedule yet for the House, but we do have the March 11th committee schedule for the Senate, and those bills are mitigation banking, something that I think we talked about very briefly last week. I think it's got a pretty good chance of making its way through the process. Brownfields by Trunow, kind of similar comments about that. I think it's likely to move this year. The general permit for distributed wastewater treatment systems is going to be on House and Senate next week. I think that's going to move. It's supported by DEP and Senate staff, Senate leadership. The stormwater management systems bill is, to me, kind of a nothing burger, but this isn't the bill that requires that all local governments use DOT stormwater designs. Um, this is more about making sure that all local governments inspect their stormwater systems annually. I think there's maybe some merit to that, maybe some concerns about unfunded mandates, but This is, what I would characterize as a response to the flooding from last year and a desire to quote, do something about it. These others I don't know much about. I haven't read into them yet, but 7 bills on the calendar for next Tuesday. And the first environmental committees in the House and Senate, they're going to be meeting on Tuesdays until all the subcommittees stop meeting. So next, 6 weeks or so, these will be the first reference committees, and the bills that are going to make it through will likely go through both of these committees. I've only talked for we're 4 minutes into our scheduled meeting time. Does anybody have anything that's jumping off the page, in your mind as something that we should be concerned about? Yeah, Scott, you dove right in.
Oh yeah, just a quick question on that stormwater management bill, and I haven't looked at it yet. Are they talking about increasing inspection of stormwater systems in addition to the new regulations and the new NPDES permits?
Yes.
Okay.
It's actually a new form. Sorry, it's a new form that has to be filed with the Division of Emergency Management.
That's right. It's for flood protection.
Okay.
Yeah. Thanks, Jen. If that's something that you care about, yeah, definitely, look at it. I will be watching this bill and the other one. I'm drawing a blank on the names. I'm still not the numbers. I mean, but the other stormwater bill says that local governments have to utilize DOT approved, designs for culverts and other stormwater structures, and that that's going to be another red flag item for local governments. I've asked the Florida Stormwater Association if they've got an opinion on that, if they're tracking that, or who's behind it. Yeah, Jen, go ahead.
It's actually only for our this is Jennifer Johnson at DOT. It's actually only for our pipe spec, and it specifically references our DOT specifications related to pipe culverts and pipe inspection. So it's very interesting as the word the intro does not quite match what the requirements are. But it is just for our it doesn't bring in like the drainage manual as far as design criteria is concerned. It is purely just for how pipes are installed and inspected.
I appreciate you sharing that context. I agree with you. That's not jump out when you read the summary of the bill. We've already started to get some questions about this one. And like I said before, this is 1436 by McLean and then the House Companion. Again, I'm not remembering the number off the top of my head, but there is a House Companion. Neither of these bills have been referenced. They've all been referenced to committees, but neither of them have been scheduled for their first committee hearing. So that's not to say that there isn't an interest, or this is very, very early, that most of the bills have not been referenced or haven't been scheduled for the first committees. But as Jen mentioned, it does impact local governments and some aspects of the design. Just listening to Jen's explanation sounds like it's just for pipe design. The Stormwater Association, which represents almost all of the local government stormwater utilities and MS4 permit holders, are probably the ones who would be most impacted by this bill. And so I've reached out to the Stormwater Association to see if they've got a position or if they know kind of what problem is being solved by this bill. Sometimes there's just, somebody with a local constituent issue that had a flooding problem that they believe to be an insufficient something, and they want to go fix it. And, I'm always worried about the unintended consequences of that. Particularly early on, until things start to be clearly moving, my goal is just to kind of go through everything and just to give you a taste for what's in the mix. Please let me know if any of these are kind of jumping to the top for you and you've got a problem with. I don't have anything on my list that I would say we should be as an association 100% behind or 100% against. I think a lot of things we should be watching. A lot of things are going to be interesting to some of us. Some of us may have an interest in getting them passed, but as an association, I don't see anything kind of anti or for environment, from our perspective. Nothing that I would advocate for Alan to weigh in and get us, get our, start spending political capital on getting them through. So let me just start from the top here. So water management districts, in the House by Connerly and in the Senate by Environmental and Natural Resources Committee. This is a priority of the Senate leadership. And this is something that we talked about last week. I'm sure we're going to continue to talk about. The Senate version is moving. I think it's already moved through 2 stops now. So you could tell it's been prioritized. I consider this a likely to pass. There are some aspects of it that we're tracking as an association because CCNA is mentioned in the bill. This is going to be talked about on the general bills call, so I'm not going to spend any more time on that one. The mitigation banks bill, I talked about that at the outset. It has been calendared in the Senate. I think it's likely going to move. This has to do with utilizing out of service area credits because of the recognized shortfall in credits in some parts of the state. There's a resolution in the House to adopt a definition of One Water. This is an outgrowth of the One Water Commission's efforts. Nothing in here policy related, just a definition of the kind of approach, and maybe you could infer a statement of legislative intent if it's passed and goes through. I did mention the brownfields bill. This is the House version, but the Senate version is calendared for next week. There's a lot of interesting things in here, including making Superfund sites eligible for brownfields, some efforts to streamline some of the processing of the paperwork associated with designating brownfields, and then pursuing the voluntary cleanup tax credits. If you're in this space, this is a bill that's going to be very interesting to you. A version of this has been filed for the last, over the last 5 or 6 years have been pieces of this that have been floated before. So there's something in here that'll be familiar to you. I'm not really interested in this water access facility bill. This has to do with land leases on clean marine facilities. There are a couple of bills on mooring that I think are going to be in here that I think are going to be controversial. We'll talk about those when we get to it. The special districts bill, I only have this in here because it abolishes soil and water conservation districts and transfers those duties to DACs. Overdore filed the House version. I can't remember who did the Senate version, but I would categorize this, and I think it's just noteworthy to bring up. If you haven't heard, there is kind of a state equivalent of the federal Doging of agencies, looking for streamlining, reforms, and things like that. And I would put this bill, or at least that particular provision of this bill, in that category. There are a few notable examples of bills that are attempting to streamline or cut or transfer authorities from one agency to another, ostensibly for the purposes of efficiency. One of them is going to be talked about on the general bills discussion later because it's DBPR and affects the PGs. So I'm not going to talk about that on this call, but just to let you know, this is in that category. There's a bill to streamline the procedure for releasing conservation easements. That's been a concern of development interests that maybe have a prior conservation easement on a piece of property, and staff at various water management districts being for or against, releasing them, not releasing them for nothing, but maybe swapping them for other land, not seeing a conservation easement as a permanent moratorium on any activity. So that's been a frustration. So this bill is intended to relax that. I think I've talked about no, I guess this is the first example of distributed wastewater. This is a new category of wastewater facility, domestic wastewater facility permitted by DEP for a septic tank replacement technology. Full disclosure, I'm working on this bill for one of my companies I'm involved in. If you have any interest or questions about that, I'm happy to share with you, but I do want you to know I'm involved in it. So I have a bias. There's a recycling bill being moved forward. I'm not sure if it's going to pass, but this has to do with, updating the procedure for how we calculate recycling. There was if you remember from 10 or 15 years ago, a 75% recycling goal for the state. We've not hit that. There have been a couple of efforts over the last few years to kind of tweak how we're scoring things to get that number higher. Here's the Brownfields Companion Bill. We already talked about that. Here's the Mitigation Banking Companion Bill. We've already talked about that. Okay, so Safe Waterways Act, it's kind of a misnomer title. This bill was also filed last year and I think made it all the way to the floor and didn't pass at the last minute. But this transfers the bacteriological sampling of beach and public bathing places from DOH to DEP. So another kind of, this one isn't, I wouldn't say it's doji because it was being proposed before Doge was an idea, but could be considered that it just transfers authority for a program from one agency to another. There's a springs restoration bill that our friend Bill Connerly filed in the House. I can't remember right now who's got the Senate companion, but it does tweak the way reclaimed water is incorporated in the domestic wastewater facility. The way it's credited for domestic wastewater facilities and in the BMAPs or the OFW, the Outstanding Florida Springs Recovery or Prevention Strategy Plans, there's been some concern that reclaimed water adversely impacts, groundwater. I know this is not new, a new thought, but this is a tweak to the way that reclaimed water is categorized in these recovery prevention strategies or TMDLs. There's the companion recycling bill. There's the companion special district bill. There's a couple of waste to energy bills. I don't think they're going to pass. There's a couple of bills filed about creating causes of action for properties that, impacted by former phosphate mining. A couple of coastal resilience bills. Okay, thank you. I saw a note in the chat about 810 being opposed by League of Cities. Yeah, I'm not surprised. Oh, now I'm seeing notes. Sorry, I've been just droning on. Thank you for your comments, and I'll do a better job of paying attention to them while I'm rambling. Yes, the spreadsheet that you're looking at is available online, and maybe Laura or Amanda could put a link to that if you're not already aware of it. So this spreadsheet will be updated weekly and posted weekly. Okay, so I was talking about the coastal resiliency bill. This is modifying gray and green infrastructure guidelines. There's a link to Florida Flood Hub. If this is in your bailiwick, then definitely take a look at that. There's 739. We talked about the stormwater, the DOT related stormwater bill already. There are a couple of bills on state lands management. If this is something that you care about, please take a look at them. I think they're likely to pass. Another kind of doji feeling bill is this bill by Rep. Overdorf. There's a companion by Senator Grahl. It has to do with how all departments, but this one, at the initial hearing was DEP was singled out as a criticizing the statement of estimated regulatory costs, which is part of rulemaking. If an agency proposes a rule that exceeds certain financial impact thresholds, they're obligated to publish a statement of estimated regulatory costs along with the rule. And if it exceeds higher thresholds, it has to go back to the legislature for ratification. The initial laws that put this requirement on the books was back in Governor Scott's days, 2011-ish timeframe. So it's been a while, 20 years, 14, 15 years since this was first put on the books. And I think that it's probably makes sense to revisit those requirements, because I would agree, and I think DEP would admit that the CERC for the stormwater rule was pretty minimal, and for such an impactful rule, probably deserved more effort. So that's what this bill would do, is puts a lot more requirements on, including public input requirements to the CERC development process. Kind of puts the CERC a little bit like a rulemaking process. So the CERC would have to be, go through a public process as a companion to the rulemaking. I think the agencies would say that's more burdensome, fully understand, but for rules that have impacts to the economy, I think those burdens are, you could argue they're justified. But that's going to be debated as those bills move forward. There's the companion DWTS bill. There's the companion phosphate mining bill. Starting to come to the bottom of this, I promise. Companion state lands bill, springs restoration bill. I think I accidentally threw this in the list, and I wish I didn't. There's something in here on trust funds for wildlife management areas. I don't really care about it. Unless y'all do, I'm going to delete this. This is the waste to energy companion. It has a different title, but it's the companion to the one I mentioned earlier. There's the companion of the bacteriological sampling, Safe Waterways Act, the companion to the Administrative Procedures Act. Okay, so this is another bill by Rep. Connerly. Just, notably, he's been getting anything engineering related in the House, anything, certainly water resources. So even as a freshman, which don't normally get a ton of assignments from leadership, he's been asked by House leadership to carry all these technical bills. So he is definitely not being treated as a freshman. He's getting a lot of meaty topics. He's doing a great job, and he's having a lot of fun. This is, I don't think this has a Senate companion, so this may be a bill that's already kind of DOA. But this allows building permits to be issued while septic tank permits have not been issued. So for a building permit to be issued, the septic tank permit would only have to be applied for. So it's a pretty long bill that only changes that one word from issued to applied for. I've talked to Bill Connerly about it. He's not going to be upset if there's not a Senate companion. It's not filed. I think somebody asked him to run it, and he did it. Here's 810. We talked about that at the outset. This is the stormwater management bill that requires the local government inspections. And thank you, Doug, letting us know that League of Cities is opposed to 810 as well as 739 and 1436. I mentioned earlier, when I have reached out to the Stormwater Association, and when I get their opinions on it, I'll incorporate that, or I'll share that information as well. This bill by Senator Ana Maria Rodriguez, who is the committee chair for Environmental and Natural Resources. This is an interesting bill. It seems to be one of these issues when you've been doing this long enough, you'll kind of sniff them out. It looks like somebody tried to file a permit application to put a landfill where somebody didn't like it. And so a bill got filed to make sure that never happens again. And so this has to do with solid waste facilities within a specified distance of the Everglades areas. That's her home district. So I've not seen a House companion, so I don't know, what's going to happen there. There's a bill on advanced wastewater treatment. This will OPAGA, this bill by Senator Lori Berman is probably not going anywhere. This requires OPAGA to look into lead in our drinking waters, in our drinking water. Corey Simon filed a bill prohibiting oil and gas drilling in certain areas. Again, that kind of, just what I talked about with the solid waste facilities. That's something in his district. I don't think there's a House companion. I think that was done for, I shouldn't say it because it's being recorded. I'm going to stop. The companion bill for the stormwater, on the stormwater bills. This one was this was the companion to Connerly's bill that changes the septic tank permitting. I think it was withdrawn. I'm still trying to get to the bottom of this. It keeps popping up as withdrawn and then popped up as filed, but Bill Connerly said it was withdrawn. But getting down the bottom of the list, these things have not moved forward or they're withdrawn. This one is not even a bill anymore. This was the pre-filed bill, committee bill for water management districts. I need to take this off the list. So kind of at the bottom of the list here, and with 6 minutes left, no, Nick, nothing on PFAS, but I think there should be. And I'm going to be talking to DEP about that today. And Rep. McClure, our Chair McClure, is aware of that issue. So if you want to talk about that, we can talk about that or whatever else you want to talk about. Anybody else have anything? Otherwise, I'll talk PFAS because Nick dared me to. We still around? Radio check?
I'll check.
Okay. There are, Holdner asked about carbon sequestration. There are 2 bills on carbon sequestration. They're filed by Democrats. I don't think they've been referred to committees. I read them both as DOA. Have you heard anything different? Okay, bipartisan. I'll look
We've
at
got 2 Nicks
1063.
on the call, Jeff.
Say again?
We've got 2 Nicks, so
Okay, yeah, sorry. Nick Albergo wanted to know about PFAS.
he's on here.
Yeah,
still.
I'm here. I'm sorry. I am still learning how to use a microphone correctly after all these years. Yeah, well, yeah, my comment's just that, as you know, there's so much going on at the federal level that's up in the air. I was just a little surprised we didn't see anything at the state level, especially when I seem to recall at one point, didn't we have a mandate that DEP start moving in January of 2025 if the feds did not?
Yes. And so back as recently as December, DEP said in a public forum, deputy secretary level statement, that they would be asking for an extension of that time, given the uncertainty at the federal level with the drinking water standard that EPA promulgated last year being challenged. I think the stakeholders I'm talking to would appreciate having some more time to see that shake out. I think, it's very likely that the federal administration may change the drinking water standard, either because they have to, because a judge tells them to, or because they want to, because the argument is it's too onerous, it's, unattainable and too costly. And the federal administration may change its mind on that and use the litigation to adopt a new standard. So in the meantime, if DEP were simply to adopt the federal standard, that would look short-sighted and pretty stupid if that ends up changing, because then they got to go back and change it. In the meantime, our drinking water facilities, although they're not going to be impacted immediately, they all have, there's a delayed effectiveness of adopting a standard, and when those standards are applied to permits, think that the problem is immediately there's, a state standard that is in the, small parts per trillion. And, it could be that the trial attorneys start pulling, people's water samples and starting class action suits for exceedances, even though the drinking water facilities aren't required to attain or adopt those standards into their permits until their permits come up for renewal. So it just creates fear, doubt, and uncertainty, which nobody wants. So, kind of back to your question, Nick, I believe that we're likely to get some PFAS extension, amended on to some environmental bill to kick the can a year or two, maybe a year. Meeting with DEP about it today. 9:44. Okay, so in the last minute, I just want to say that next week you will get a report, but you won't get me. I'm going to be I'm going to be traveling with the family. So hope everybody has a great weekend and a great week next week. And I will see you the week after in person. In the meantime, if you want to communicate with me by email, I'm happy to answer your questions by email.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you, everybody.
Have a
Thank
good
you.
day,
Hey,
everyone.
Jeff. Hey,
All right,
Jeff.
take care.
Hey, Jeff.
Oh.
Yeah,
Sorry, this is Sherry. Would you mind staying
Hey,
on
Sherry.
for just a moment?
of course.
Thank you so much.
No problem.